Greetings, everyone. Thank you for watching Design TV. I'm Mary Jo Bowling, and I'm the Homes Editor for Luxe Interiors and Design in Colorado and San Francisco. It's my pleasure to be talking to Miranda Cullen, who is the co-founder of Duet Design Group in Colorado. Now, we're going to be talking about one of her projects that is full of character and color. Miranda, hello. How are you doing?
We're doing great, thank you.
Oh, great. Well, I'm very excited to talk about this house. I loved it when you presented it to me, so it's a real pleasure to talk about it on Design TV. Now, when we wrote about this house in an article earlier, we talked about how it's one of those houses where you can tell that something's going on inside before you ever open the front door. What are the clues from the front porch that let you know this is going to be an exciting interior?
Well, the client allowed us to do a really dramatic exterior. So the exterior of the house is, we completely painted it this really beautiful charcoal, almost black color. So when you pull up, you definitely are like, what the heck is going on there? And then as you kind of come up the walk into the front landing, we have a beautiful custom iron rail that we did, and sitting beyond that are these a little bit more of a modern take of a high wingback porch chair. And it just is like a little taste of drama before you even get in the house. And there's all sorts of really special, sort of quirky, fun pieces that we were able to sort of integrate into that design. And that's kind of where it starts.
And then once you open the front door, there's a really interesting color story going on inside. Tell me how that came together.
Well, the client was really interested in very concentrated colors, which is very different than what most clients come. You know, a lot of clients are really color adverse, and you kind of have to push them into that to get a little bit of movement in the house. And sometimes houses are completely tonal, but this client in particular liked everything saturated. So, and they were definitely not afraid of color. So a lot of the finishes that we did have a really high gloss lacquer to it, and you kind of see that when you walk in the front door. So you kind of come in, we designed this amazing front, custom front door, and you open the door and you've got this gorgeous feel of this early turn of the century house with really chunky moldings and cased openings and really beautiful accents. And then you kind of look left and right, and we have this sort of mirror image of these rooms. The one to the left is a dueling office space, and the one to the right is the living room. And what we did to kind of bridge those two rooms together is really take this gorgeous, saturated, beautiful blue color and add it in a high gloss finish. And so you walk in and instantly you're seeing that drama, and that finish and that color kind of you see a little bit as you kind of meander through the house. But there it was kind of, they wanted this showstopper for when their guests entered their home, and so that's what we did.
And you know, you mentioned it's kind of unusual to have a client who's this color bold, right?
Yes.
Who's this color fearless, I should say. Any idea why he gravitated towards these colors?
You know what? No, we do a really fun exercise with our clients to get them excited about color. And the questionnaire they filled out for us, they clicked every color under the sun. And so when we did our fabric exercise, there was just a lot of talk about, ooh, I love that color. Ooh, I love that color. And, you know, a lot of it was really sort of primary saturated colors. And so wanting to make sure that we're able to give the house a sophisticated feel that it deserves. And then also embracing his love for color. So it truly was client driven, which is the best because, you know, when they're wanting that from you and you're like, okay, let's do it. It works out very nicely.
So fun. And, you know, I think the people who are timid about using saturated hues together might like to hear you talk about how do you pull it off? How do you pull off all these jewel tones together?
Well, it's definitely a story that sort of unravels as you walk through the house, and you do have to be very careful when you are sort of building a scheme around colors that are super saturated and making sure that you're getting a lot, enough of that sort of light balance off of the other items in the room. So for instance, in the living room where we did that really beautiful saturated color on the walls, we matched the window treatments so that the treatments sort of blended, but we gave the leading edge like a little pop of a contrasting white. And then we took that sort of color and we used that for the area rug that bounds the space, lighter upholstery. So we have a lot of that play going on so that the colors just, or the light's not coming through the windows and just dying and getting sucked in by all of the dark colors. We're giving some light reflection with those lighters, as well as doing a high gloss finish on the walls also does allow light to bounce. So that kind of helps out too. And then we did a lighter ceiling, a texture on the ceiling. So, you know, all of those kind of play into it, but what you don't want to do is create this feeling, unless you're really going for that sort of dark, sort of Dungeness dramatic effect. You want to make sure that you're going to get the play on light. Another thing we do is multiple levels of lighting. So you have your ceiling lighting, then you have your mid-level lighting, and then you have your up lighting so that you have the ability to have multiple sources of light if you need to lighten up the space a bit.
So it's all about balance and light,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So, you know, this isn't just a color story, though. This is a story about making a home really functional for a family.
Yeah.
What was it like before, and how did you make it more suited for the people who live here?
Yes, so our client about 10 years prior had done an extensive remodel on the house. And when they were done, there was sort of they weren't really satisfied with what they did because they tried to infuse a lot of sort of contemporary takes within the sort of traditional bones of a house. And so they always felt like there was a bit of a mess. And so when they had us out to do the initial consultation, you know, we walked into the home, we were kind of dumped into a space that was office / entry, and then the living room off to the right, just the way that the space planning is put together. And, you know, the clients have great taste. And they didn't enlist with an interior design the first time around, but they just felt like the space is not functioning the way that we want or need it, and we're not quite sure how to get it there. So, you know, by making sure that we're addressing that piece of it, and, you know, pretty much all of the sort of contemporary takes that they did for modern day design, we actually did end up taking most of those out and added back in the thicker moldings. Like we had to have some of a lot of the original moldings were in the house, but in the areas that we added, we had to have special moldings milled so that it matched all the original stuff. And we added that character back into the bones of the house. And then we brought sort of forward thinking with the lines of the furniture, mixing some fun, you know, cleaner lines with some more traditional lines so we could get some play. So it just didn't look like, you know, an old fashioned turn of the century house. It had some character, it had some movement. You know, obviously the play with the saturated colors and those jewel tones, that, you know, gives it more of that elevated, more modern day look, but just making sure that we were giving that original nod back to that turn of the century look was really important for us anyway, and sort of to make the story kind of go through the rest of the house, because it was very disjointed how they had it. The living room had those nods, the kitchen had those nods, but the family room didn't. That was more modern, and the master didn't. It was more modern. So just really trying to pull it all together so that the house just makes sense as you kind of go through.
And, you know, we should say, and you mentioned, but this is actually a Victorian house.
Yeah.
And so an earlier remodel had kind of stripped some of that character.
Mm-hmm.
So when you started adding the character back in, was there anything left to give you clues about what had been there before? Or did you add Victorian touches where they had just been erased?
No, we definitely took what was sort of left and then added to that. So you know, it had a lot to do with most of the millwork. So making sure that that piece of it got back in, and that piece was in every single room, you know, because when you think back to houses of that era, you know, you see a particular crown molding, that double stacked molding that typically happens, you know, throughout the most of the house. And so making sure that there was consistency with those nods You know, the living room fireplace, that piece was original, and we left it and painted it so it would blend in, but we still have that really good texture, and that overall design intent was still there towards that nod of turn of the century, and then giving it that paint aesthetic, you know, the new paint, we were able to kind of give it a little bit more of a cue to today's times.
And then, you know, all the wonderful modern pieces you have in here, how do you make those live comfortably within a Victorian house?
You know, my favorite type of house is an eclectic house. So, you know, you might have, you know, grandma's antique next to a clean line, sort of a bit more modern sofa, you know, playing a lot with lighting. We do a lot with lighting as far as having it be sculptural and a little bit more art based, but really letting the clients say to us what it is that they're looking for. So, you know, this particular gentleman has two teenage kids. His son is away now at college, and his daughter at the time was a junior in high school. She's now sent to senior, but they, you know, they're a younger family. So making sure that they feel comfortable in that house. You know, they bought, you know, an early 1900s house, and they love the charm of that, but it doesn't mean that you have to have uncomfortable carvy, you know, antiquity looking furniture throughout to make it feel like home. So for them, it was about comfortable sofas and comfortable chairs and textiles that felt really good to touch, while then having sort of that bones of the house being that original piece of things. And so again, they sort of trusted us. It was kind of sky's the limit as far as what can you come up with that's going to give us this look. And ultimately the house turned out gorgeous.
You know, one of the places where I think you can really see Victorian era meets modern day era is the fireplace that you reimagine that sits between the family room and the dining room. And I know that you remade this fireplace with a really innovative material, and that material almost looks like the ceilings, the old pressed tin ceilings that you would see on the ceiling of these Victorian era homes. So tell us about the fireplace and this material and how you made that all work.
Yes. So in the before pictures of this room, it had a very obtrusive, like just big, massive angled fireplace with this very modern tiles. So again, we removed that unique piece and then created the sort of square dining room and added the moldings in, added a softened opening in. And on the side that then has where the fireplace is, you know, the side to the dining room is the two-sided to the family room. And our thought was, how do we make these spaces their own, but still be able to interact and still have this fireplace element? And it was very important to the client of having an open, gorgeous fireplace. And so trying to figure out how we're going to do that, you know, that sort of floating stack is a little bit more of a modern take on a fireplace, but by finding this really unique, it's actually a relief that is foam on the inside. So it's completely fire retardant, so we could put it on the fireplace. But by coming up with this tile that we wrapped on all four sides of the fireplace, we were able to give it that character. To your point, you know, what you might see in a design of an original tin ceiling, we were able to take that and again, reimagine it into a more updated aesthetic on the fireplace. So, and then you see again, we use that same high gloss blue on this fireplace. So we're again still seeing that consistent of that saturation throughout the house. But as we get into that family space, it becomes less about the entire room being that and more about just, you know, important pieces so that we have that consistency throughout.
And I think this blue is called Seaworthy, isn't it? A Benjamin Moore color?
Gorgeous one, yes.
Gorgeous. I've had people email me to ask me about the color, which we do mention in the article. So, and then of course that fireplace, it's sort of the like an accent wall, almost like a partial accent wall in the family room, but it's also a backdrop for the new dining room. And you know, you were talking about character lighting, accent lighting, the dining room is a perfect example, and it really pops against that blue wall. And also the round table. And this gave you an opportunity to put in a new kind of table and reimagine how the dining room works and flows. How about that? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so the original layout had a really long, sort of stately dining room table. And one of the comments was that it didn't feel intimate enough for them to have a family dinner. So they would all cram at the kitchen island, and that's where they would eat. And we were like, well, you know, you should be able to use every space and figure out what it is that's missing. And you're not comfortable sitting there. And ultimately, it came down to them wanting a little bit more of an intimate space, which is what we were able to create, you know, by using that fireplace as sort of a partition, a beautiful partition between the two activities of, you know, family room, you know, relaxing, and then either formal dining or family dining. So by adding a round table that still allows 6 people up to 8 people, gets a little bit tighter with 8, but 6 people to sit comfortably, it gave them an opportunity to have those daily family dinners, and they didn't feel like they were sitting, you know, at King Arthur's table at end to end with each other, you know, so they were able to have a bit more intimate space. Plus, you know, it just, that entire area just lended itself to that. And, you know, by adding that sort of sculpted piece that hangs down and is the backdrop, you know, the fireplace is the backdrop to that, it just, everything kind of came together with centering that round table in the room.
And, you know, one of my favorite moments in this house, those emerald green chairs, I think they're velvet, right?
They are velvet.
Emerald green velvet against that blue is so yummy. I love it.
Yeah, yeah. And the chairs have this beautiful white leather piping around them too. They're just like every ounce of, you know, again, they gave us a lot of creative freedom in creating this aesthetic for them. And so even like those smallest of details that we were able to do just kind of adds that next layer in.
Now, another very beguiling and appealing room is the well, you call it the living room, but we also, it's kind of the library now, the blue room. And this is very different than it was before. And the idea of using it as a library is very different. Tell me about what the client wanted to accomplish with that.
I know, sorry, we have some buzzing going on outside our door.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, so the living room, as I said before, was set up a little bit more formally in that they had the sofa and these chairs, and it just wasn't set up as more of like an intimate conversation space. And so the client ask was, we want multiple purposes in the house. The house is not a ton of square footage. And so we need to make sure that the spaces that we're touching are giving that functional need for them, as well as hitting that aesthetic. And so, you know, he had said, I really like a place that is sort of a pseudo library that we could, you know, pull up a chair, kick our feet up, watch, you know, listen to the podcast or read a book, or, you know, sit with a laptop if I don't want to work formally. And on the flip side, when I have some friends over, it would be nice to have an intimate place to entertain. That's not the family room hooked to the kitchen that, you know, everybody sort of gathers around. So something that's a little bit more, not formal, because they're not really necessarily formal people, but just another opportunity to be able to entertain in a nice way. So by creating that sort of wraparound conversation piece, we gave them cozy chairs that they can sit in. They could sit in there as a family, or they can sit in there 1 or 2. And then, yeah, we found these amazing bookcases that have kind of a sculptural aesthetic that we then painted to blend into the walls. So you kind of get this, what's going on there? You know, there's really pretty color blocked books in these, you know, what is all of this? So we opted to go more of a furniture route and less of a built-in route, because that's just not the look that they wanted for the space.
The shelves are unlike any I've ever seen. They're so cool. And to make the most of them, do you have to color block your books in there, do you think?
Well, it was definitely something that the client said that they really liked. They gave us a couple of inspirational images of built-ins that had color blocked books. And we don't find that often. And so, yeah, we were like, let's embrace it and let's do it. And let's get some of those pops of colors that we're looking at and seeing in some of the fabrics we use throughout. Let's pull those out and use those. So just kind of gave us a fun opportunity to treat books as art.
Now, with the former formal living room made into more of a den, more of a library, then the real gathering spot is the family room.
Yes.
So how do you make a family room that's both elegant for when you're entertaining and comfortable when it's just a family?
Well, with this particular space, we obviously gave them a really cozy, comfortable sectional. The end piece is actually called a couch, which we thought was kind of ingenious in terming, because it's not really a sofa, it's not really a couch, it's, you know, not really a chaise, it's kind of this just wide, really cozy piece of furniture that looks really pretty. And then by putting a sort of more of a beautiful sculpted chair and some really impactful tables, we're able to kind of get that play on the comfort and the elegance. So again, using some furniture pieces kind of towards a nod towards art was kind of our look to that. And plus you've got the spaces that are just adjacent. That dining room is right there. That wall detail continues into the family room. We embedded the TV into into that wall detail right above the fireplace. So you're still getting that nod. But I think that by doing that little bit deeper, that cozier fabric sectional, it gives you the opportunity to snuggle up, curl up, do whatever, or again, you know, have some friends over and sit and entertain there. And because it's right adjacent to the kitchen, which no matter what we try in our homes to get people to spread out into our other areas, everybody wants to gather around that kitchen island, right? So, you know, just embracing that space as well.
You know what? You learn something new every day. I have never heard the term couch.
Yep. You know, that was a new one for us.
But you know, not every room here is about gathering and entertaining. You've got a couple of rooms that are for more individual, more quiet moments or pursuits. Tell us about the office and the craft room.
Sure. So the office, like I said, originally is adjacent to that formal living room. So you walk off the entry and the space is there. So again, it was very important that the office have a beautiful aesthetic because they didn't want doors there. So they didn't want to really close down that space. So it needed to feel like a part of the pretty entrance to the house. They also needed dueling workstations. So because his daughter is home and they really like to spend time together, having an opportunity that he has a desk, she has a desk, and that those pieces are really beautiful pieces that they can sit and work at. That was kind of all that consideration. And then we did a custom built-in around the back side of those windows to give them storage opportunities, display opportunities. You know, we hid all the messy office stuff behind the doors and all of that, so that the room, because the room is not overly huge, but by having them sort of have their desks back to back and each of them have their own chair style, so that's kind of fun, you know, given each space its personality. It allows those areas to kind of be different, but still work together in the space. So we have that. And then downstairs in the basement, there was an area that was originally a wine room. And they're like, we're never going to use this as a wine room. What can we do with it? And so we thought, let's make it a crafting space. So someplace where, you know, when you get out to do your crafts, it doesn't have to necessarily be where you have to clean everything up because you're at the kitchen table doing it and put it all away. So scrapbooking or whatever it is, a school project, all of that can stay contained in this room. And then again, we had a lot of fun putting together the aesthetics. So the door that goes into that space, we actually had custom upholstered in a black leather with a nail head detail that's fantastic. And so you open this up and it's green and hot pink and just, you know, a lot of really fun, playful colors. And then we have the functionality piece of where all of the sort of mess goes behind the doors. So it was a great opportunity to kind of create a niche little space that all of us dream that we have. You know, it's just kind of a fun little thing, a little niche area in there.
And, you know, I've heard a lot of people talking, speculating that it's these kinds of rooms where you can go to be quiet or alone or pursue a passion or an interest, that these kinds of rooms are going to be really important to homeowners in the future. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think these spaces, maybe in design a few months ago, a year ago, whatever, were a little bit more of a luxury space. If you have it, let's do it. And if you don't, whatever, we'll figure it out, kind of thing. But I think now, for me, I'm a mom of 2 teenagers. My husband's working from home. We're all on top of each other. So if one of us had an area where we can just go and be, and it, was beautiful. And, I think it's just making people think through how they're currently living in their homes and how they're currently being forced to live in their homes, and seeing how all of that's going to kind of come full circle into the want versus need category. Anytime you're doing a home project, we always ask our clients that, is it a want or a need? And I think that those types of things are going to start changing as far as priorities.
Right. Now, of course, you mentioned that there's spaces that you would like right now in this house. And I'm wondering if you could appropriate any area or element or feature of this house into your own personal living space. Which one would you choose?
Oh goodness, there are a lot of fantastic things about this house. I have a little bit of house envy from this one, because I'm driven by that character of the architecture. The fact that it's not like this, gigantic house, but each of the spaces, has some beautiful purpose. But I think that honestly, what I personally took from this design is that I myself have wanted to start infusing color back into my house design. So when my husband and I first, the house that we're living in now, started designing it, I took all of the color out of it, because I'm like, I deal with color all day long. I just want to come home. I want simplicity. I don't want a lot of things going on. And I very much have sort of changed my tune now. We're starting to infuse a lot more color in, get a little bit bolder with our fabrics. My daughter's like, Mom, really? And I'm like, yeah, trust me. She always has an opinion at 15. But I think that, just doing that for myself as a designer and allowing me to have fun with fabrics, and not just be sort of our client thing. That's kind of one thing that I'm starting to do for myself.
If I could take one of the colors, I love the green of the craft room. What's your favorite color here?
I don't know. I kind of like them all, but I do think that the blue that's kind of consistent throughout, that's kind of my jam. I really like it. There's something sort of regal about it, sophisticated, yet with that high gloss piece. It just gives it a little bit of playful, and that's kind of me. I'm kind of all over the place with regards to that. So.
Well, Miranda, this is all we have time for today, but thank you so much. And please say hello to Devin Tobin, the co-founder of Duet Design Group.
Yeah.
And thank you all very much for watching Design TV. Join us next time.
Thank you for having us.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline Terrebonne, the editor-in-chief of Galerie magazine, and I'm thrilled to be joined here today with Alexandra Champalimaud. She leads a brilliant New York City-based design firm, which for over 3 decades have conjured some of the most incredible and magical and transportive spaces you can imagine. In the latest issue of Galerie magazine, we feature her and her firm and talk about how they use different design styles and ideas from residential to make hotels feel more like home, but then also create a feeling at home that feels like you're someplace truly special. So Alexandra, thank you so much for joining me here today. I really appreciate it, and everyone loves the story in the summer issue of Galerie.
Well, I'm delighted, and I couldn't think of a better place to be than with you today, recording this interview and making this interview with you.
I am very fascinated with one of your recent projects. I heard so much about it. Everyone was talking about what a magical transformation it was at the Raffles in Singapore, and how it's such an iconic property, but you breathed new life into it. You know, what was your overall direction for that Raffles?
Well, clients look to me very much to lead a renovation and make it successful. And that is no small task. It's a very big responsibility. Of course, one's not alone working on these things. There are usually a very competent, wonderful group of people with whom I interface. But the most important thing of all is taking the time to research, to listen, to understand its history, to understand what it meant and what it means to the people who go there continuously, and how was it first born? What were the roots of this hotel? Why did it become so successful? What does it represent? And you need to intake all of those thoughts and those answers, and then you start designing. It's not, design is, in my case, in doing many hotels, is that you really absorb the character of the place first, and its issues, and then you go ahead and do your work.
Right, it's not just things that you think are pretty.
Oh, no, exactly. That takes up a little short bit of time.
Yeah. So what did you suss out from this research? What did you find was the character of the place, and then how did you incorporate that into the design elements?
Well, first of all, I love its history. It has been from the 19th century. 2 brothers started it as a sort of a beach club, so to speak, and it was right at the edge of the ocean. It presently is completely inland. So it's still on Beach Street, but it's now inland because they've appropriated so much of the land from, recuperated it so much. But it still remains this extraordinarily ornate, almost like a bridal cake. It's white, and it's pure white, the whole facade. It is not very tall building because it is from the 19th century. And it, however, extends almost 2 city blocks within extraordinarily beautiful gardens that are dappled, along the way. You have these wonderful gardens, and you have almost like a city in and of itself as part of the hotel. You have shops and, of course, restaurants and spa, and a very famous Singapore sling at one of the bars that was invented there. But mostly, I imagined during the early 20th century, sort of the first 40 years of its real existence as a hotel, as we know it today, was with sort of expats and people who had brought a lot of the English culture to this place and to Singapore, and that interfaced with the Chinese Malay culture, which gave birth to a lot of the inspiration of the architecture and the details that I used in the interiors. So the hotel has enormously wonderful ghosts. You just have to listen to them and then go ahead and come up with your own script.
So are there favorite spaces that you create in the hotel, a favorite public space or something that you're like, that's the room for me?
I think one of my favorite creations that we did for this project was the restaurant for La Dame au Pic, which is a beautiful, super deluxe, super luxurious, beautiful restaurant right in the main lobby. And it's all pink, and it sounds feminine, but men looks extremely good in it, and people of all everyone just looks wonderful and happy and festive. And that's one of my most treasured rooms because it is feminine yet completely usable and sort of modern in its aesthetic. The guest rooms too are extremely interesting because they are an enfilade of three rooms. In fact, there's an entry, what would have been a veranda back in the 20s, and where they would have had, no air conditioning at the time, so they would have a ventilation system through all the shutters. And the shutters were open, and you'd have this little sitting room, and then beyond that would be your bedroom, and then beyond that was your bathroom. So we maintained that. We maintained that layout, and we obviously renovated it all, keeping some of its characteristics, but including things such as, you can imagine big brass old bells, the ones that you would, and your switches. So we kept all of those old gadgets, so to speak, and we renovated them and we reused them. And those little details like that, of which there are thousands, is what makes up the new renovation feeling as though it's been there all the time, although it's completely refreshed and fun.
Right, you're still in touch with the past that way.
Yeah, one has to be, because it has a legacy, and people are looking for that. And so when we do our design, it needs to be inspired in what both the country and the people and the whole place offers. For instance, the bathrooms, we put Peranakan tiles, inspired tiles. And Peranakan is a Chinese Malay way of, it's a cultural thing, and and their designs are particular. And so we used that, we were inspired in a lot of that visual and applied it in the hotel in different places. But we did about 5 restaurants. There are about 90 plus sort of large suites and guest rooms with these enfilade rooms, as I explained to you. And for instance, the bathtub's in the middle of the bathroom, and it's beautiful. It's got a copper sort of surround, and it's very reminiscent of an extraordinary luxury of the 20s, except it's super modern.
Wow. Well, that's something that, that's what you want in a hotel. That's what you want when you travel. And just you're talking about it makes me feel even more filled with wanderlust right now and wanting to hop on a plane to somewhere exotic. But you have a project that's recent as well, that's a little closer to home with Troutbeck.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So that's a complete 180 almost in ways.
Each one of these properties that we have been lucky to have, they're a huge responsibility. So as a designer, one comes up with not only, it takes all the experience and the combined experience between the people in my studio who are enormously talented. But what I bring to the table is the ability to understand each project with its history and its lifestyle attached to it. I imagine, and I kind of, as though I know what it was once. And Troutbeck is another place that, although it's certainly nowhere comparable in size or or exposure, but more recently it's become exposed, even though in the past it has always been an extraordinary place. I mean, it has over 200 years, in fact, of some version of hospitality. The Benton family were first there, and then Mr. Spingarden, who owned it thereafter. And the original building burned down. The one that's there now is Edwardian, and the Spingarden family really were amazing hosts. The gardens are beyond. Mr. Spingarden was completely interested in flowers, and he was on the Botanical Gardens board. He was very literary. His friends, we invited his friends who are romantics, naturalists, humanists, and poets. There was sort of Thoreau, Hemingway, Lewis Mumford, Teddy Roosevelt, Ralph Waldo Emerson. These are all
quite a
people,
list.
they're all friends and visited there.
Wow.
The interesting part is that also Martin Luther King was a guest. The NAACP was founded there, which is amazing, in Troutbeck. So there were this sort of intellectual group of people that came together. And so when we showed up, it had changed a little bit. For a period of time, it was sort of a conference center. And so we removed what we considered, we went back to the bones of the building. Mm-hmm. And what were the original patinas or finishes we left? And what we restored, or what we put new, were very tailored, completely tailored for Troutbeck in a very subtle way. I had fabrics woven, and so that they felt almost like a collection of pieces, as opposed to, oh, there's a velvet sofa and there. It's sort of layering of wonderful pieces, one over the other.
So you were giving it a sense of time. You were weaving that in. It wasn't just for all the new things that showed up with the renovation.
Nothing appears new. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't feel shoddy or old either. It feels quite cool and sort of current and young. But you find families and couples and single people and everyone of all ages, and lots of locals. Mm-hmm. And people love what we've done, and what, in fact, my son Anthony Champalimaud and his wife Charlie have, in fact, managed to continue and create themselves, which is a culture in the service. And they have an amazing food also. So that combination of design and keeping what was authentic, and expanding where we needed to. For instance, there's now a movement studio that they've put in, and the beautiful double barns with the sort of 27-foot high ceilings put in outside. So it's got a lovely outdoor pool. It's a place which is super romantic. I mean, the trees are to die for. And so because of he was a clematis collector and collected the most in the 20s. And the Botanical Gardens has all that collection, of course, since then so it's a very interesting group of people who are intellectuals, clearly, and you sort of feel it.
That feeling of intellectual. So how do you weave in that garden from outside, and the feeling of, all of these great thinkers have walked these halls? How do you bring that into the design?
Well, maybe I've got some positively, this is a nice way of putting it. Each one of us are some form of a caricature, if you really think of ourselves. And I think of very learned, wonderful men and women, often sort of walking around universities and in libraries. They often sort of that sort of spectacles and the hair. Well, we don't have time to cut your hair, and so your clothes aren't modern, but they're good quality, and so you take all of these inspirations and you apply the same thing, which means, but first of all, the connection with the garden happens on every single floor. No, on every floor, in fact, because the second floor has verandas. Some of them are interior, and we put a bathtub in one of them. And
Oh, beautiful.
so it's fun. And then the ground floor, everyone has access out to the outside. And so it's an indoor-outdoor place, if you would.
Right.
Even in the winter, it's just heavenly. Even in the winter, I mean, incredibly tall sycamore trees, a beautiful trout river going through it, and so all I had to do is not make a mess of it, I think.
Oh.
But what I had to do was peel down all the wallpaper that was there and the wall-to-wall carpet, and expose all the wood floors, put down rugs, some of which were my own. I have a large collection of all sorts of things, and then old fabrics. I found those. I have some of those, and each one went on different chairs. And we did a restaurant that before that just didn't exist certainly the way it was done now by us, and a bar. And it's just, the bar is super simple, but it's not everything is dressed to impress. It's just chill.
I love that. I love chill. And then in the bedrooms, what sort of things do you do in the guest rooms to make it feel that part of history? But I think now we have so many technological sort of expectations of a hotel room. How did you marry the two, or
we decided not to go crazy.
Good.
And you can have breakfast in bed on a tray. You can have it's a different sort of feeling. It's like being in the family home you always wanted.
Oh.
Of course you've got Wi-Fi, of course you've got extremely good connectivity, but it's more important that we didn't put, and the lighting is sufficient and in the right spots, but we didn't put any art, but a beautiful letter from Martin Luther King is in each guest room. That's the only piece of art we have. And the bathrooms were all redone, and we did beautiful bathtubs and wonderful additional bathrooms, and it's simply done. I mean, simple linen curtains, but the colors in the rooms are pretty special.
Mm-hmm.
And we did ceiling and walls and woodwork all the same color.
Oh, gorgeous.
And the furniture sort of stood out a bit more. And I bought remnants everywhere. This was not the place where I bought.
This is a lot of work. This is not
yes.
Order up some bolts and we're done. This is, I mean, that is it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of hours to make something.
It does,
but unique and thoughtful.
But it pays off, I think, because the feeling is everyone's at home in the sitting room, which has, I'm having 3 or 4 doors in it. You have at least 8 to 10 people in it at all times, in the corners, on the window benches, and everyone's there with their children. Or somebody's got his feet up, the other, and you walk through it, and you almost feel like everyone's your first cousin in that place.
Oh.
You know, everyone is just got the same feeling of being fairly quiet or having a good time, but being considerate. So it's part of the job in design, in my opinion, is the most important is to not only have incredible visual experience, but
right.
it's really the emotional one that I work on.
Exactly. It's crucial.
Because the visual is important, but it should not overpower the place.
Yeah.
In any case, anywhere I do.
It's about the feeling at the end. It's about that.
You got it.
You get.
And that's what you remember.
Yeah. And then what about the feeling when you walk into the Hotel Bel Air? What absolutely another extraordinary, legendary project that you've recently worked on.
Well, I haven't lost my hair because that doesn't seem appropriate. I've got plenty of it. but all these jobs that I've had over the years, it requires enormous amount of work and responsibility. Now, the way I was hired to do that job was Alexandra I've got the perfect job for you. I want you to redo it. I do want it to be more contemporary than it is. I need it to last at least 30 years. So in terms of, or 20 or 30 years, something, it's not just a flash in the pan. You cannot renovate and add new rooms and find something that is too trendy that within 2 years it loses its glamour or its personalized. So as you probably know, the Bel Air has incredible gardens. That is its real key. The staff are equally stunning. They are amazingly kind, and they know everyone and everything, and they're just the nicest people, and you feel completely at home. We designed a whole new spa building with suites and so on above, which are long stay places where people come, and the spa is always full.
That sounds like heaven. Long stay spa at the Hotel Bel Air. Like,
I promise
check
you.
me in, please.
It is. I think you'd like it. And it has Marilyn Monroe's pool that I've never, obviously I wouldn't dream of touching. It's this beautiful oval pool. That's a romantic thing. The gardens are exquisite. The restaurants are fantastic. The bar, but you're all in the garden all the time doing this. So we did do some canyon suites, which were a new build, which are enormously popular because each one of them has an exterior sort of pool of their own, and a jacuzzi and so on and so forth. And each area, the main building had a genre of design. The canyon was sort of more California modern, if you would, the canyon suites. And then each individual suite, I think we did about between 8 or 12 of them, that were absolutely unique, independent, extraordinary suites. One very feminine with embroidered sort of butterflies on the wall.
Oh, wow.
And another, but charming, and the color of your beautiful dress, that color that was on the sofa, you know. So and this wall covering that was to die for and handmade, and another one which was all black and white with and then with wonderful colored sofas on it, and just goes on. I can talk about each one of them at length, but I think I might overdo it if I did.
But I love the variety and the thought putting to each of those suites to make them such a unique experience. And all glamorous and a part of this very special place, and to last 30 years, no less. What a brief.
No, I know, which is a huge response, which means you have to design classically with huge quality, but something that will last. Mm-hmm. So it can't be of yesterday's news. And so one, for instance, there's a Grace Kelly suite that has always been there. So I thought it was a bit too much of a cliche to put Grace Kelly on the wall, so to speak. So I have a beautiful picture of her, Jean Trimington, her name is. She was a wonderful model in maybe the 60s, 70s, the 60s in England. And this beautiful profile of her, big black and white photograph, ceiling to floor, and it's beautiful. That suite is all yellow, the color of your dress, and white. And it has a garden off it, so a living room, a beautiful bathroom, a dressing room, all done in beautiful boiserie, and then that paneling, and then a lovely sort of just super quiet and gorgeous. But what looks lovely is the fact that Jean Trimington was one of her biggest. She adored Grace Kelly's, and the world knew about it. So I put a picture of her in Grace Kelly's suite. It's the fact, just you didn't want to put the picture of Grace Kelly, so to speak. And then we did a new presidential suite, which I have to say is absolutely wonderful. It has a bit of we commissioned beautiful sort of old leathered worked doors, and it's all white, and with exception of some beautiful satin turquoise, huge curtains that just drop flat on the floor of this white marble. And I have to say, there isn't a very famous movie star of beautiful people from all over the world who just take that suite 3, 4, 5 weeks long every time they're there. One or two couples I actually know, some of which actually were very gracefully invited me to do some work for them later on. But they were in those suites for months and months on end.
Well, that's fabulous. They did a test drive, and then they definitely knew they wanted you to do their home. Now, another equally glamorous project, the Palazzo della Luna, the spaces I've seen that you did there are incredible.
Well, it's beyond incredible, that place. I mean, I think, imagine a building, first of all, its location is extraordinary. In that part of the world, in Florida, on the water, in Fisher Island, which we all know is one of the most exquisite places ever.
Definitely.
We've done pretty much all the public spaces. We did indoor spas, the hair salon, 4 lobbies, 4 for each different place, and they're all different.
4 lobbies.
The screening room, what else? Model rooms.
So what was the feeling you were capturing there? What was the ambiance that you were?
Incredibly natural, but polished, beautiful, elegant, upmarket Miami, super chic. You would, so elegant, fabulous big slabs of marble, lovely areas with beautiful paneling, fabric on the walls. There's one area which we did a bar behind this wonderful fretwork of iron sort of gates, which we actually commissioned an artist to do, and it was nothing but beautiful birds that were solid, bronze birds throughout this whole screen. And so the room has got 4 screens, and then beyond it there's a sitting and lounge room, a card room, a bar, a place you can have breakfast or have a drink, and it gives to the outside, to the beautiful gardens. So the amenities is really what we did. But if I told you there are about 15 different amenities in that building, which are big spaces, and happily it's been a huge success.
Everyone's talking about it. It really is taking things to a new level there. And of course, you would be the one to do it, Alexandra.
You're so kind.
No, I'm telling the truth, speaking the truth, because your work is really exceptional in that you could take these legendary properties around the world, breathe fresh life into them, but also listen to the place and the sense of history, and bring that into the present is exceptional.
That's the way I do think. I cannot.
It shows and it pays off. It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, it's very nice of you to say. I think I am truly honored by the feedback I have received throughout my career, and it goes on, but one of the things, and I have unbelievable partners.
Yeah.
And senior designers and people who we've worked together for 30 years in my office, and they know, I mean, they bring enormous diversity into the studio, and competence, and I'm so grateful for it, because clearly I'm like everyone else, I'm getting older, and you
can't be everywhere. These projects are around the world, but we're at the end of our conversation today, but I just want to thank you so much, Alexandra, and everyone. You should read more about her and her firm, Champalimaud Design, in the summer issue of Galerie, and definitely read more about it and see more on gallerymagazine.com. And like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram at Galerie Magazine. And Alexandra, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Such a huge pleasure. I wish everyone all the luck in the world through all these difficult circumstances in which we're all living. And I'm sure we will prevail. We have to. We have no choice. And thank you for this beautiful piece and your time and for this opportunity. I'm most grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, dear.